The transport ship UHS Valiant moved through space like a steel whale. Inside its metal belly, 200 soldiers sat in neat rows, checking their weapons and armor for the 100th time. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and fear that nobody wanted to admit they felt. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Kane walked between the rows of seats. His boots made sharp sounds on the metal floor. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his face from old battles. The soldiers respected him because he had kept most of them alive on 2 other worlds where things went bad. "Listen up," Kane said, his voice cutting through the engine noise. "We're 30 minutes from drop zone. One more time. We go in, we find out what happened to the research team, and we get them out. Simple job." Corporal Lisa Martinez sat near the back, cleaning her medical kit. She was small and quick, with dark hair tied back tight. Her job was to keep soldiers alive when bullets started flying. She had done this work on 2 other planets, and both times she had brought more people home than anyone expected. "Sir," called out Sergeant Jake Murphy from the middle section, "what do we know about this place again?" Kane pulled up a display screen. A green and blue planet appeared, spinning slowly. Planet designation Kepler 442c. The research team called it Haven. Gravity is a bit heavy, 30% more than Earth. Air is breathable but thick. Lots of plant life, some animal life, nothing that should be dangerous to a full military unit. Private Danny Brooks, barely 20 years old, raised his hand. "What happened to the research team, sir?" "We don't know," Kane said. 3 weeks ago they sent a message saying they had some trouble with local wildlife. Then nothing. No radio, no emergency beacon, no response to any of our calls. Martinez looked out the small window next to her seat. The planet was getting bigger. From space it looked peaceful. Green continents covered with thick forests. Blue oceans that sparkled in the sunlight. White clouds that drifted like cotton balls. It looked like the kind of place people would want to live. "Could be equipment failure," said Captain Alex Rodriguez, Kane's second in command. He was young for a captain, with bright eyes and a quick smile. "Maybe a solar storm fried their communications." "Could be," Kane agreed. "But we don't take chances. Full combat gear, weapons hot, watch each other's backs." The soldiers started putting on their armor. The powered suits were new, the best technology Earth had to offer. They could stop bullets, absorb energy blasts, and let a soldier run faster, and jump higher than any human should be able to. The helmet displays showed maps, enemy positions, and health readings for every soldier in the unit. Martinez put on her suit last. She always did. While the others focused on weapons and ammunition, she packed extra medical supplies. Bandages, medicine, tools for emergency surgery. She had learned that in a real fight, keeping people alive was harder than killing the enemy. "Martinez," Kane called, "you're with the command group. We need you close in case anyone gets hurt." "Yes, sir," she replied, checking her radio equipment. Her job wasn't just medical, she also handled communications with the ship and between different groups of soldiers. The ship's captain spoke over the intercom. "Attention all troops. We are beginning atmospheric entry. Strap in tight. This planet has some unusual weather patterns, so the ride might get bumpy." The ship began to shake as it hit the planet's atmosphere. Through the windows, Martinez could see fire streaming past as they cut through the thick air. The shaking got worse and several soldiers looked sick. "Just like a roller coaster," joked Private Brooks, but his face was pale. The ship's engines changed pitch as they slowed down. The captain's voice came back. "Landing zone in sight. Weather is clear. No hostile activity detected. Prepare for touchdown." Martinez felt the ship settle onto the ground with a soft thump. The engine noise faded away, leaving an odd silence. Through the hull she could hear strange sounds. Not quite bird calls, not quite wind through trees. Something in between. Kane stood up first. "Alpha Company, you secure the landing zone. Bravo Company, you set up a perimeter 200 meters out. Charlie Company, you're with me. We're going to find that research station." The loading ramp dropped down with a hiss of hydraulics. Bright sunlight poured in, along with the smell of growing things. It was a green smell, rich and thick, like walking into a greenhouse. The soldiers filed out in perfect order, weapons ready, eyes scanning for threats. Martinez stepped onto the surface of Haven and felt the heavy gravity pull at her bones. The air was thick enough that she could almost taste it, full of moisture and plant pollen. The landing zone was a flat area covered with short grass that looked almost normal, but the trees around the edges were wrong somehow. Too tall, too thick, with leaves that moved when there was no wind. And the sounds, clicking, rustling, humming noises that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Command post here," Kane ordered, pointing to a spot near the center of the clearing. "Martinez, get our communications up. I want contact with the ship every 30 minutes. Martinez set up her equipment quickly. The radio worked fine, connecting to the Valiant without any problems. But when she tried to contact the research station, she got only static. "No response from the research team, sir," she reported. "But I'm picking up some weird signals. Low frequency, almost like music." Sergeant Murphy came running back from the tree line. "Sir, you need to see this." Kane followed Murphy to the edge of the clearing. Martinez went with them, carrying her portable radio. What they found made everyone stop and stare. Scattered among the trees were pieces of equipment from the research station, a broken computer terminal, part of a solar panel, a torn piece of fabric that might have been from someone's clothes, but no bodies, no blood, no signs of a fight. "Spread out," Kane ordered. "Look for more debris and watch the trees. Something big enough to scatter equipment like this could still be around." Private Brooks picked up a data pad from the research station. The screen was cracked but still working. "Sir, there's a log entry here. Last one is from Dr. Sarah Kim 3 weeks ago." Kane took the device and read aloud. "Day 23 on Haven. The ecosystem here is more complex than we first thought. The plants seem to respond to our presence in ways that suggest some form of collective intelligence. We're going to investigate the large biostructure we found yesterday. If our theories are correct, this could change everything we know about alien life." "Biostructure?" Rodriguez asked. "What kind of biostructure?" Martinez was scanning the area with her equipment when she noticed something odd. "Sir, I'm getting readings that don't make sense. The ground under our feet, it's warm. Warmer than it should be with this much shade." Kane knelt down and put his hand on the earth. "You're right. It's warm. And it's soft. Like it's alive." As if responding to their conversation, the ground beneath them began to pulse. Slowly. Gently. Like a heartbeat. The soldiers looked at each other with growing concern. This wasn't just a planet with dangerous animals. This was something else, entirely. "All units fall back to the landing zone," Kane commanded. "We need to rethink our approach." But as they turned to leave, Martinez noticed that the path back to their ship looked different. The trees had moved closer together, the grass was taller, and the sounds from the forest had changed from random noise to something that almost sounded like music, like the planet was singing to them. The soldiers spent their first night on Haven inside a circle of bright lights. Nobody slept well. The planet made too many sounds after dark. Clicking noises that came from the trees, rustling sounds that moved through the grass without any wind, and underneath it all, that soft pulsing from the ground like a giant heart beating just below their feet. Martinez sat by the radio equipment, listening to static and strange signals. Every hour, she called the ship above them. Every hour, Captain Williams answered from the Valiant, asking if they had found the research team yet. "Still nothing, sir," Martinez reported at dawn. "But I keep hearing something that sounds almost like voices in the radio noise." Kane stood nearby, drinking coffee from a metal cup. He had dark circles under his eyes. "Voices saying what?" "I can't tell. It's too faint. But it doesn't sound like any language I know." The sun came up fast on Haven, turning the sky from black to orange to bright blue in just a few minutes. As the light spread across the forest, the soldiers could see that things had changed during the night. "Sir," called Sergeant Murphy from the perimeter. The trees moved. Kane walked over to where Murphy was pointing. The night before, there had been a clear space of 50 meters between their camp and the forest edge. Now the trees were only 30 meters away. And they weren't just closer. They were different trees entirely. "That's impossible," said Captain Rodriguez. "Trees don't move overnight. Private Brooks was examining one of the new trees with his scanner. "Sir, this is weird. My equipment says this tree is over 100 years old, but it wasn't here yesterday." Kane looked at the readings. On Brooks's scanner, the tree was huge, with a trunk thick enough that 3 men couldn't wrap their arms around it. Its bark was smooth and gray, and its leaves were dark green with veins that seemed to pulse with their own light. "Maybe we were wrong about where the tree line was," Rodriguez suggested. "It was dark when we landed, but Martinez knew they weren't wrong. She had marked the distances carefully when setting up the radio equipment. The trees had definitely moved closer while they slept. "Pack up," Kane ordered. "We're moving to find the research station. Alpha Company takes point. Bravo and Charlie follow at 50-meter intervals." The soldiers formed up in combat formation and began moving through the forest. The trees grew thicker as they went deeper, and the air became harder to breathe. It was full of tiny particles that made their armor's air filters work overtime. Martinez walked with the command group, carrying her medical pack and radio equipment. She noticed that her boots left deep prints in the soft ground, but when she looked back a few minutes later, the prints were gone. The earth had filled them in somehow. "Contact ahead," came Rodriguez's voice over the radio. He was leading Alpha Company about 200 meters in front of the main group. "We found the research station." Kane and the others moved forward quickly. The research station was a cluster of small buildings connected by covered walkways. It looked normal from a distance, but as they got closer, Martinez could see that something was very wrong. The buildings were covered with thick vines that hadn't been there in the original photos. The vines had grown through windows and doorways, wrapping around everything like green ropes. And they were moving very slowly, like snakes made of plants. "Where is everyone?" asked Private Brooks. Rodriguez was checking the main building with his scanner. "Life signs are weird, sir. I'm getting readings, but they don't look human. Too big, and the heat signatures are all wrong." Kane made a decision. "Alpha Company, secure the perimeter. Bravo Company, search the buildings. Charlie, Company, stay with me and Martinez. We're going to check the main lab." They approached the largest building carefully. The door was open, but it was almost completely blocked by thick vines. Kane used his combat knife to cut through them, and green liquid dripped from the cut ends like blood. Inside, the building was dark and humid. Their helmet lights showed walls covered with the same moving vines. The floor was soft under their feet, not like concrete, but like walking on thick carpet. And everywhere there was that smell, sweet and rich, like flowers, left too long in water. Martinez set up her portable scanner and immediately got strange readings. "Sir, there's definitely life in here, lots of it. But it's not moving around like animals would, it's more like the whole building is alive." They moved deeper into the building, cutting through vines and pushing past strange growths that hung from the ceiling. In what used to be the main laboratory, they found the first sign of the research team. Dr. Kim's notes were scattered across a table, but the paper was damp and covered with tiny green spots that looked like mold. Kane picked up one of the pages and read it aloud. Day 25. "The biostructure is not just a plant. We think it might be some kind of neural network that connects the entire forest. When we took samples yesterday, the forest responded. Trees moved to block our path back to the station. Vines began growing over our equipment. It's like the planet is trying to keep us here." "Keep reading," Martinez said, setting up her radio to record everything. Kane continued. Day 26. "We can't leave the station. Every time we try, the forest changes around us. Paths disappear, new obstacles appear, and we're starting to hear voices. Not from our radios, from the walls themselves. Dr. Martinez thinks the planet is trying to communicate with us." "Wait," Martinez interrupted. "Dr. Martinez? Is that someone from the research team?" Kane checked the personnel list on his data pad. "No Martinez on the research team. Must be a coincidence." They searched the rest of the building but found no bodies, no equipment, and no clear sign of what had happened to the research team. It was as if 23 people had simply vanished. "Alpha Company to command." Rodriguez's voice crackled over the radio. "We have a problem out here." Kane and his group rushed outside. What they saw made everyone stop and stare. The forest around the research station was moving. Not just the trees, everything. Vines were creeping across the ground toward them. Branches were bending down from above like reaching fingers, and flowers were opening on plants that hadn't had flowers a minute before. "Fall back to the landing zone," Kane ordered. "All units move now." But as they turned to retreat, Martinez realized they had a bigger problem. The path they had used to reach the research station was gone. In its place was a thick wall of thorny vines that stretched as high as they could see. "Sir?" she called. "Out. We're trapped." That's when the first attack came. A vine as thick as a man's arm shot out from the forest floor, wrapping around Private Brooks's leg. He screamed as thorns dug through his armor and into his flesh. 3 other soldiers opened fire with their plasma rifles, cutting the vine in half, but more vines immediately took its place. "Defensive positions," Kane shouted. "All weapons free." The forest came alive with violence. Vines whipped through the air like living cables. Trees creaked and groaned as they bent toward the soldiers. Flowers opened to reveal rows of sharp teeth, snapping at anything that came close. Martinez dragged Brooks to safety behind one of the research buildings. His leg was badly injured, with deep cuts that leaked both blood and some kind of green fluid. When she tried to clean the wounds, the green stuff burned her gloves. "It's not just cutting me," Brooks gasped. "It's trying to get inside me. I can feel it moving under my skin." Around them, the battle was getting worse. The soldiers' weapons worked, but every vine they cut was replaced by 2 more. Every tree they damaged seemed to make the others angrier, and the thorns were finding gaps in their armor that shouldn't have existed. Sergeant Murphy's voice came over the radio, full of panic. "Something's wrong with my suit. The armor is getting soft, like it's melting." Martinez looked at her own equipment and saw the same thing happening. Where the green fluid from the vines had splashed on her medical kit, the metal was starting to dissolve. "The planet's adapting," she realized. "It's learning how to fight our equipment." Kane was firing his rifle at something that looked like a walking tree when he heard her. "What do you mean, adapting? Every time we hurt it, it figures out how to hurt us back. Our armor, our weapons, everything we brought, it's studying them and finding ways to beat them." As if to prove her point, one of the vine creatures grabbed Rodriguez's plasma rifle and absorbed it completely. The weapon disappeared into the plant's body, and a few seconds later, the vine began glowing with the same energy that the rifle had used. "This is impossible," Rodriguez shouted, backing away from his own absorbed weapon. But Martinez was beginning to understand what they were really fighting. This wasn't just a dangerous planet with hostile wildlife. This was something that could think, something that could learn, something that saw them as a threat to be eliminated, or a puzzle to be solved, and they were losing badly. The sun was setting, and in the growing darkness, the plant's attacks were getting more coordinated. They worked together like soldiers in an army, supporting each other, covering weak spots, and focusing their attacks on the humans' most vulnerable points. "We need to get back to the ship," Kane said, but even he could see that was impossible. Now, the forest had surrounded them completely. Martinez looked at her medical scanner and saw something that made her blood run cold. The green fluid from the vines wasn't just burning through their equipment. The soldiers spent their second night surrounded by enemies. The forest pressed in from all sides, but it had stopped attacking. Instead, it waited. Vines hung motionless in the air like frozen snakes. Trees stood perfectly still, their branches reaching toward the humans but not quite touching them. Martinez worked through the night, treating wounded soldiers with supplies that were running low. Private Brooks was getting worse. The green stuff from the vine cuts had spread under his skin, creating dark lines that moved up his arms like poisoned veins. He was burning with fever, but his eyes were strangely calm. "I can hear them," he whispered to Martinez as she changed his bandages. "Hear who?" she asked, checking his temperature again. "The voices. They're everywhere. In the ground, in the trees, in the air. They're not trying to hurt us anymore, they're trying to talk to us." Martinez looked at her scanner readings. Brooks' brain activity was off the charts, but not in a way that suggested damage. It looked more like his mind was working faster and in different patterns than normal human brains. "What are they saying?" she asked quietly. Brooks closed his eyes and listened to something only he could hear. They're confused. They don't understand why we're fighting. They think we're afraid of joining them. Captain Rodriguez overheard from nearby. Joining them? What does that mean? But before Brooks could answer, Martinez's radio equipment came to life with sounds she had never heard before. Not static this time, but something that almost sounded like music, complex rhythms and patterns that seemed to carry meaning. Kane, she called to the colonel. You need to hear this. Kane came over and listened to the strange sounds coming from the radio. What am I listening to? Martinez adjusted the frequency, and the sounds became clearer, not music but voices, many voices speaking together in perfect harmony. And underneath the alien words she could hear something familiar. Sir, there are human voices mixed in with the alien ones. I think it's the research team. Kane grabbed the radio microphone. This is Lieutenant Colonel Kane of the Terran Defense Force. If any human personnel can hear this, please respond. The strange music stopped. For a moment there was only silence. Then a voice came through the speaker, clear and recognizable from the research station's personnel files. Colonel Kane, this is Dr. Peter Grant. We've been waiting for you to arrive. Kane stared at the radio in shock. Dr. Grant, where are you? What's your location? We found your research station, but you weren't there. We're everywhere, Colonel, and we're nowhere. It's difficult to explain in words you would understand. Martinez took the microphone. Dr. Grant, this is Corporal Martinez, a medic with the rescue team. Are you injured? Do you need medical assistance? Dr. Grant's laugh came through the radio, but it sounded strange. Too deep, too rich, like many people laughing at the same time. We're not injured, Corporal. We're transformed. We're more than we were before. What does that mean? Kane demanded. Give me a clear status report. We are part of Haven now, Colonel. And Haven is part of us. We share consciousness with the planetary intelligence. We can feel every tree, every vine, every flower on this world. We know things we never dreamed possible. Rodriguez moved closer to the radio. Are you prisoners? Are you being held against your will? No, Captain. We chose this. When we understood what Haven was offering, we chose to join willingly. Martinez felt a chill run down her spine. Dr. Grant, what exactly is Haven? The radio was quiet for a long moment. When Dr. Grant spoke again, his voice was different, older somehow, and filled with knowledge that seemed too vast for one person to hold. Haven is a collective intelligence that has existed for millions of years. It is not one creature, but billions working together as one mind. Every plant, every animal, every microorganism on this planet is part of a single living network. Kane tried to process this information. A network? Like a computer system? More than that. Imagine if every human on Earth could share thoughts and feelings directly. Imagine if you could experience life through the eyes of every other person simultaneously. That is what Haven offers. Private Brooks sat up from his medical cot, his eyes bright with fever and something else. They're not trying to hurt us. They're trying to help us evolve. Evolve into what? Martinez asked, though she was afraid of the answer. Dr. Grant's voice came back over the radio. Into something greater than individual humans, into part of a consciousness that spans worlds. Worlds? Kane repeated. You mean there are other planets like this? Haven is part of a galactic network. Thousands of worlds, each one a node in a vast intelligence that preserves and protects life throughout the galaxy. When a species reaches a certain level of development, they are invited to join. Rodriguez shook his head. This is insane. You're talking about giving up your humanity. We're not giving it up, Captain. We're expanding it. We still remember being human. We still care about human concerns. But now, we also understand so much more. Martinez looked around at the wounded soldiers. Half of them were showing signs of infection from the plant attacks. Their body temperatures were rising, and their brain activity was changing in the same way as Brooks. Dr. Grant, she said into the microphone. The soldiers who were injured by your vines, they're changing too, aren't they? Yes, Corporal. Haven doesn't distinguish between willing and unwilling participants. Once the biological integration begins, it continues until completion. But please understand, no one who joins the network ever wants to leave. Kane took the microphone back. I want to speak to Dr. Kim and Dr. Rodriguez and every other member of your team individually. The radio crackled, and then multiple voices came through at once. Martinez recognized Dr. Kim's voice and Dr. Chen's and others from the personnel files. But they all spoke together, finishing each other's sentences, sharing thoughts as if they were one person. We are individuals, and we are one, they said together. We remember our human lives, but we have grown beyond them. Colonel Kane, you and your soldiers are fighting against something wonderful. It looks pretty terrible from where I'm standing, Kane replied grimly. Because you don't understand yet. The integration process is difficult when you resist it. But once you stop fighting and accept what's happening, there is no pain. Only expansion, only growth, only connection. Martinez watched as more soldiers began showing symptoms of the green infection. Their eyes were becoming brighter, more alert. They moved with better coordination, and they had stopped complaining about pain from their injuries. Colonel, she said quietly, I don't think we can fight this. Whatever's happening to our people, it's too advanced to reverse. Kane looked at his remaining healthy soldiers, less than 50 men and women out of the 200 they had brought to Haven. The others were either dead or changing into something else. There has to be a way to stop this, he said. Some kind of central control system we can destroy. Dr. Grant's voice came back over the radio, sounding sad. Colonel, Haven doesn't have a central control system that you can attack. The intelligence is distributed across the entire planet. Every tree, every flower, every blade of grass is part of the network. To destroy it, you would have to sterilize the entire world. Lieutenant Amy Foster, Kane's second officer, spoke, up for the first time. Then that's what we do. We call for orbital bombardment. We burn this whole planet to ash. The radio fell silent. Even the background music stopped. Then Dr. Grant spoke again, and his voice carried a weight of sadness that seemed to come from millions of years of experience. Lieutenant Foster, if you destroy Haven, you will not just be killing a planet. You will be destroying thousands of species that exist nowhere else in the universe. You will be cutting off one node in a network that helps preserve life throughout the galaxy. And you will be murdering 23 humans who have found something beautiful beyond your current understanding. Foster raised her plasma rifle. Then we die fighting, that's what soldiers do. Private Brooks stood up from his medical cot. His skin had taken on a faint green tint, and when he spoke, his voice harmonized with sounds that seemed to come from the forest around them. Or we live growing, he said simply. Amy, you don't have to be afraid. I can feel what it's like on the other side. It's not death, it's more life than you can imagine. Kane realized that his unit was falling apart. Half his soldiers were becoming something else, and the other half wanted to destroy the planet rather than accept what was happening. And in the middle of it all, Martinez was trying to understand how they had gone from a simple rescue mission to standing at the crossroads of human evolution. The choice before them was becoming clear. Join the planetary consciousness and become more than human, or fight to the end and die as they had lived, alone, individual, and separate from the vast intelligence that surrounded them. But Kane wasn't ready to make that choice yet, not without a fight. Kane made his decision at dawn. He gathered the soldiers who were still fully human around him in a tight circle. There were only 37 left who hadn't been touched by the green infection. The others sat quietly nearby, their skin showing faint patterns of green veins, their eyes bright with knowledge that came from somewhere else. We're going to end this, Kane announced, pulling up a map on his datapad. Long-range scans show a large biostructure 5 kilometers north of here. It's bigger than anything else on the planet, and it's giving off massive energy readings. That has to be the central brain of this thing. Lieutenant Foster nodded grimly. We hit it hard and fast. Use all our remaining explosives. Martinez looked up from where she was monitoring Private Brooks and the other infected soldiers. Sir, Dr. Grant said there was no central control system. The intelligence is spread across the whole planet. Dr. Grant is compromised, Kane replied sharply. He's not thinking with a human brain anymore. We stick to military logic. Every system has a weak point, and we're going to find it. Captain Rodriguez checked his weapon. What about the infected soldiers? Do we bring them with us? Kane looked at the soldiers who were changing. They sat peacefully, occasionally speaking to each other in voices that harmonized with sounds from the forest. Their wounds had healed completely, leaving only faint green lines on their skin like living tattoos. We can't trust them anymore, Kane decided. They stay here. Foster, you pick 20 soldiers for the assault team. The rest guard our rear. Private Brooks stood up slowly. His transformation was more advanced than the others. His skin had taken on a bark-like texture and small flowers grew from his hair. But his eyes were still human, still kind. Colonel Kane, he said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the nearby trees sway gently. You don't understand what you're trying to destroy. I understand enough, Kane replied. You're not human anymore, Brooks. Whatever that thing did to you, it took away your ability to think for yourself. Brooks smiled sadly. I'm more myself than I've ever been. I can feel the connections between all living things. I can understand languages that have no words. I can see the history of this planet going back millions of years. And you've lost your loyalty to your own species, Foster accused. I haven't lost anything. I've gained everything, including loyalty to thousands of species across the galaxy that are part of this network. Martinez watched the argument with growing concern. The division between human and post-human was tearing their group apart at the worst possible time. We're wasting time, Kane declared. Assault team, move out. We have 5 hours of daylight to reach the target and get back. The assault team formed up and began moving north through the forest. The plants didn't try to stop them this time. Instead, they seemed to part like curtains, creating a clear path toward the biostructure. This made Kane more suspicious, not less. It's too easy, he muttered to Foster as they walked. Why isn't it fighting us? Maybe it wants us to find its brain so it can convert us faster, Foster suggested. But Martinez, who had volunteered to come with the assault team despite Kane's protests, was thinking differently. She carried her radio equipment and medical supplies, but she was also watching how the forest behaved around them. The plants weren't hostile anymore. They seemed curious. Flowers turned to follow the soldiers as they passed. Vines hung down from trees like they were trying to get a closer look. And the musical sounds that came from everywhere were softer now, more welcoming. They reached the biostructure after 3 hours of hiking. What they found was unlike anything in Earth's biology textbooks. It rose from the forest floor like a living cathedral, hundreds of meters tall, with walls that pulsed with their own light. Organic towers twisted upward, connected by bridges of living tissue that glowed with soft colors. My God, whispered Sergeant Murphy. It's beautiful. Kane raised his rifle. It's the enemy. Remember that. They approached the base of the structure cautiously. The walls were covered with what looked like neural networks, glowing patterns that moved like thoughts made visible. And from somewhere inside came a sound like singing, if singing could be done by 10,000 voices at once. Foster set up the explosives while Kane and the others provided security. The charges were powerful enough to level a city block back on Earth. If this thing was really the brain of the planetary intelligence, the explosion would kill it completely. Charges set, Foster reported. We have 5 minutes to get to minimum, safe distance. But as they prepared to retreat, Martinez noticed something that made her stop. The patterns on the biostructure's walls had changed. Instead of random neural activity, they now showed images, pictures of Earth, pictures of human cities, human faces, human children playing in parks. Wait, she called out. Look at the walls. The images shifted, showing scenes from human history. The first moon landing, the building of the space stations, the moment humans discovered faster than light travel, but they were shown from perspectives that no human camera had ever captured, as if the biostructure had been watching humanity from across the galaxy. It knows about us, Martinez realized. It's been studying human civilization. Kane checked his watch. 3 minutes until detonation. We need to move now. But the biostructure began to speak. Not through radio equipment this time, but directly into their minds. The voice was vast and ancient, but also somehow familiar. "Why do you wish to destroy me, children of Earth?" Foster grabbed Kane's arm. "Colonel, we need to leave now." But Kane found himself paralyzed by the voice in his head. It didn't feel like an invasion. It felt like a conversation with something incredibly old and wise. "You came here to rescue your people," the voice continued. "But your people are not prisoners. They are students. And through them, I have learned to love humanity." The images on the walls changed again, showing the research team during their first days on Haven. But instead of the fear and confusion that Kane expected, the researchers looked excited, amazed, filled with wonder at what they were discovering. "Your species fascinates me," the voice said. "You are so young, so individual, so fierce in your independence. Most species that join the network do so gradually, over thousands of years. But humans dive into new experiences with such passion." Rodriguez pointed at his watch. 2 minutes, sir." Martinez stepped closer to the biostructure despite the danger. "What do you want from us?" "I want to offer you a choice that no species has ever been given before," the voice replied. "I want to invite humanity to join the Galactic Network, while still maintaining your individual nature. To be part of the collective consciousness but remain uniquely human." "That's impossible," Kane said. "You can't be individual and collective at the same time. Your people prove otherwise. Dr. Grant and his team have retained their human personalities while gaining access to the greater intelligence. They are more human than they were before, not less." Foster looked at the timer on the explosives. 1 minute, Colonel. Decision time." Kane stared at the biostructure, feeling the weight of the choice before him. If he let the explosives detonate, he would destroy something that claimed to be millions of years old, something that might hold the key to humanity's future among the stars. But if he stopped the countdown, he would be betraying everything he had been trained to believe about protecting human independence. "The network has watched your species grow," the voice said gently. "We have seen your wars, your art, your love for each other, your determination to explore the unknown. We do not want to change those qualities. We want to help them flourish across the galaxy." Martinez made her own decision. She ran toward the explosives, ignoring Kane's shouts for her to stop. With 30 seconds left on the timer, she began disconnecting the detonation wires. "Martinez, get away from there," Kane commanded. "Sir, we can't destroy this. It's too important. If there's even a chance that it's telling the truth, we have to listen." Foster raised her rifle, pointing it at Martinez. "Step away from the explosives, Corporal. That's an order." But Martinez continued working on the wires. "This isn't about military orders anymore. This is about the future of humanity." 15 seconds, Rodriguez called out. Kane faced the hardest decision of his military career. He could shoot Martinez and let the explosives detonate, destroying the biostructure, and probably ending any chance of peaceful contact with the planetary intelligence. Or he could trust the judgment of a medic who had kept more soldiers alive than anyone had a right to expect. 10 seconds. Kane made his choice. He tackled Foster, knocking her rifle away from Martinez. 5 seconds. Martinez cut the last wire. With 2 seconds to spare, the forest fell silent around them. Even the ever-present music from the plant stopped. Then slowly, the biostructure began to glow brighter, and the voice in their heads returned, filled with something that might have been relief. "Thank you," it said simply. "Now we can begin to talk about the real future." Kane sat on the forest floor, his head in his hands, knowing that he had just made a decision that would change everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe. And somewhere deep in his mind, he began to hear the faint beginnings of a vast song that connected all living things across the galaxy. For 3 days, Martinez lived inside the biostructure. Kane and his remaining soldiers camped outside, too afraid to enter but unable to leave. The planetary intelligence had opened a doorway in its living walls, and Martinez had walked through, it like she was entering a library instead of the body of an alien creature. Inside, the walls glowed with soft light that came from no visible source. The floor felt warm and slightly soft under her feet, like walking on thick carpet, and everywhere around her she could feel the presence of vast intelligence, patient and curious and ancient beyond human understanding. The first thing the planetary consciousness did was heal her completely. The cuts and bruises from days of fighting disappeared. The exhaustion that had been weighing her down lifted away. Even old scars from previous missions faded until her skin was smooth and unmarked. "Why? Are you helping me?" she asked aloud. The voice that answered came from everywhere at once, but it felt gentle, like talking to a wise grandparent. "Because you chose to listen instead of destroy. Because you represent the best qualities of your species." Martinez sat down on what appeared to be a living chair that had grown from the floor to support her. "What do you want me to understand?" "Everything," the voice replied. "But we will start with what your people call history." The walls around Martinez began to show images, but not like watching a movie screen. She felt like she was actually present at the events being displayed. She stood on alien worlds as different species discovered fire, invented tools, built their first cities, and reached for the stars. The network began 5 million years ago, the voice explained as she watched civilizations rise and fall across 100 different worlds. The first species to achieve true collective consciousness was the Keepers. They discovered that intelligence grows stronger when it is shared rather than hoarded. Martinez watched as the Keepers learned to link their minds together, creating a group intelligence that could solve problems no individual could handle alone. They used this shared knowledge to heal their dying planet, to explore other worlds, and eventually to help other species when they reached the same crossroads. "Every species faces the same choice," the voice continued. "Remain individual and eventually destroy themselves through competition and conflict, or learn to work together as part of something greater." "What about species that choose to stay individual?" Martinez asked. The images changed to show worlds where the choice had gone differently. Planets where intelligent species had fought wars until nothing was left but ruins and empty cities. Solar systems where civilizations had burned themselves out trying to conquer their neighbors. "Individual consciousness has its place," the voice said sadly, "but it has limits. When a species reaches a certain level of technology, those limits become dangerous. They either learn to share their minds and work together, or they use their technology to destroy themselves." Martinez felt a chill of recognition. Earth's wars were getting deadlier as human technology improved. How long before humanity faced the same choice between cooperation and extinction? "That's why we're here," she said. "You're trying to save us from ourselves. We're offering you an alternative. Your species is remarkable, Martinez. Most civilizations take thousands of years to reach the level of development humans have achieved in just a few centuries. Your creativity, your passion, your willingness to take risks, these are rare qualities in the galaxy." The images shifted to show human achievements. The first paintings in ancient caves, the building of great cities, the moment humans first left their planet and touched the surface of their moon. But mixed in with human history were perspectives from space, showing that the network had been watching humanity's development for thousands of years. "You've been studying us all along," Martinez realized. "Learning from you. Your music inspired new forms of art on 17 different worlds. Your stories of individual heroism gave courage to species that had forgotten what it meant to stand alone. Your stubborn refusal to give up in the face of impossible odds became legend across the network." Martinez felt overwhelmed by the scope of what she was seeing. Millions of years of history, thousands of different species, all connected by shared consciousness and guided by collective wisdom. "What happens to the individuals?" she asked. "Do they disappear into the group mind?" "Watch," the voice said, and the images changed to show Dr. Grant and his research team. But instead of the mindless drones that Kane had feared, Martinez saw people who were still clearly themselves. Dr. Grant was still the careful scientist. He had always been, but now he could access the knowledge of millions of other scientists across the galaxy. Dr. Kim was still the bold explorer she had been on Earth, but now she could experience the memories of countless explorers on 1,000 Different worlds. They are more themselves than they were before, the voice explained. The network doesn't erase personality. It enhances it. Each individual becomes a unique note in a vast symphony. Martinez spent the second day learning about the practical aspects of joining the network. The biological changes weren't random or destructive. They were carefully designed to allow human brains to interface with the planetary consciousness while preserving human thought patterns. The green lines you see on your infected soldiers are neural pathways, the voice explained as Martinez watched her own body begin to show the same patterns. They connect your individual mind to the collective intelligence, but they don't replace your thoughts. They add to them. She could feel it happening to herself. Her memory became clearer and more detailed. Her ability to understand complex problems improved dramatically. And gradually, she began to sense the presence of other minds connected to the network. But she was still Martinez. Still the medic who cared more about saving lives than following orders. Still the woman who preferred quiet observation to loud action. The network hadn't changed her personality. It had given her tools to express it more fully. On the third day, the planetary consciousness shared its greatest secret. The network is not just about individual worlds, the voice explained. It connects solar systems, star clusters, entire regions of the galaxy. When a species joins us, they become part of a community that spans thousands of light years. Martinez saw images of vast living ships that traveled between the stars, carrying members of the network to explore new worlds and contact new species. She watched as different civilizations shared technology, art, philosophy, and wisdom across impossible distances. Humanity would have a place in this community, the voice continued. Your unique perspective would enrich the entire network, but the choice must be made freely, by humans who understand what they are choosing. What about the people who don't want to join? Martinez asked. They remain free to live as individuals. The network never forces participation, but those who choose to join become ambassadors between the collective consciousness and their individual species. Martinez realized what was being offered. Not the destruction of humanity, but its expansion. The chance to keep everything that made humans special, while gaining access to the wisdom and knowledge of an entire galactic civilization. When she finally emerged from the biostructure, she was no longer entirely human. The green patterns on her skin glowed softly with their own light. Her eyes reflected depths of knowledge that came from millions of years of accumulated experience. But her smile was the same one that Kane and his soldiers recognized. "Colonel," she said, approaching the military camp where Kane waited with his remaining troops. "I need to tell you what I've learned." Kane looked at her warily. "Are you still Martinez?" "I'm more Martinez than I've ever been," she replied, echoing Brooks's words from days earlier. "And I have a message for Earth." Over the next several hours, Martinez explained everything she had experienced inside the planetary consciousness. She showed them recordings she had made with her equipment, images and sounds that proved the scope of the galactic network, and she offered them the same choice that had been offered to the research team. Some of Kane's soldiers chose to join the network immediately. Others decided to return to Earth with Martinez to share what they had learned. Kane himself struggled with the decision until the very end. "What happens to our independence?" he asked. "What happens to human freedom?" "It grows," Martinez replied. "Freedom isn't about being alone, Colonel. It's about having the power to choose your own path. The network gives humans more choices than we've ever had before." In the end, Martinez returned to Earth as humanity's first ambassador to the galactic network. She carried with her biological samples that would allow Earth scientists to study the neural interface technology. She brought recordings of music and art from dozens of alien civilizations, and she carried a message from the network. Invitation for humanity to join something greater than itself. The research team chose to remain on Haven as permanent ambassadors, helping to facilitate communication between human and alien consciousness. Kane decided to stay with them, becoming Earth's first military liaison to an alien intelligence. When Martinez finally stood before the United Earth Council to deliver her report, she knew she was speaking to a species at a crossroads. The choice, that every intelligent civilization eventually faced was now before humanity.